taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of Joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
What's up, everybody? I am filling in for Rachel V. Hill as she is off. Dante Gomez here, joined by Will Peterson, denversports.com. How are you doing, Will?
I am great, Dante. Happy Friday to you. And it's basketball season, apparently.
Hey, it's everything season. We got playoff baseball going. I don't know if you caught the game last night, but that was incredible. Mets go-ahead 3-run homer. We got football this weekend. We got hockey going soon. We got basketball. It's, the sports, what do they call it? The sports equinox, when it's like everything's going at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. I had to rep the Nugs gear this morning as, they're halfway across the world. But anytime you can, get your morning started on a Friday and then tune into a Nuggets game, it's a good day. Although I did tweet it. Nuggets Celtics, that's kind of like a little dagger to the heart, right? Like, this was the series we were supposed to see last June, and instead we get it in October in Abu Dhabi. Like, okay, I'm happy Nuggets basketball is back, but it's a little tease of, man, I wish this was the NBA Finals last year.
Yeah, I wish there was a little more stakes than just preseason game one. You're looking like Michael Malone there, all the way zipped up in your Nuggets quarter zip. I like it.
Well, I don't have an undershirt on, so I don't think the people want to see that. We'll keep it zipped up for the next 20 minutes on Coffee.
Okay, hey, we'll keep it PG. I like it. It's noon on a Friday. It is Broncos-Raiders week, so we'll dive into that. Broncos riding an 8-game losing streak to their AFC foe right now. We were actually talking about it the other day, and we were asking, is it still a rivalry with the Broncos and Raiders? Has that kind of gone away since it's been so lopsided and neither team's really been in playoff contention recently? Do you still see it as a rivalry?
That's a good question. I mean, yeah, your head says, oh, it's 100%, or excuse me, your heart says it's 100% a rivalry. It's Broncos Raiders. We hate the silver and black. The players, we have a bunch of players that work at 104.3 The Fan who will tell stories about getting batteries thrown them in that dump that was in Oakland, So, yeah, your heart says yes, but your head says, is it? I mean, come on. The Raiders moved to Las Vegas. That doesn't have quite the spice as Oakland anymore. Neither team's been particularly good for quite some time. And you mentioned this awful 8-game losing streak. It's like, really? I understand you guys have stunk, but so have the Raiders. Like, the Chiefs losing streak 16 in a row, I guess I can understand a little bit. The Chiefs are really damn good. But the Raiders, 8 in a row, they haven't beat them. Dante, they haven't beat the Raiders since before the world knew what COVID-19 was. Come on, man. So it's still a rivalry in theory, but it doesn't have the juice that it once did.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I was mentioning yesterday that it's just there's not a lot of rivalries in the NFL anymore. I feel like you do need those repeated playoff matchups going to, really build that hate between the fan bases and the teams. And plus, I feel like players are so transient these days. So it's hard to really build like a good old school rivalry like we used to get. So it is, as we see on the screen here, always destroy the Raiders. So
hey, I love your attitude, Troy. I'm good with always destroy the Raiders. But listen, in the last, let's say 15 years, what have been the biggest games the Broncos have played? It's been Broncos-Patriots. You mentioned it was those rivalry games when it was Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady. You had the 2 AFC title games here in Denver. Like, the Patriots were more hated for a big stretch there than the Raiders were, because it was always having to get through the GOAT to try to get to the Super Bowl, which Peyton Manning did do twice in orange and blue. But those games stand out to me as much bigger over the last, again, 15 years than anything the Broncos and Raiders have done.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, let's break down the matchup we got this weekend. It is a big game for both teams, both 2-2, kind of a tipping point, could be considered a tipping point for both teams here. Where are they going to go from here? Are they going to, get propelled into playoff contention, or are they going to kind of get into that mediocre AFC kind of fighting for relevancy after the week? So let's start with, we're going to go kind of position group by position group. Where do you see the edge between the Broncos and Raiders here? We'll start off with the coaching staff. Where do you see the edge between Sean Payton and Antonio Pierce?
I mean, Sean just got so much more experience under his belt than Antonio Pierce. Like, I know the Raiders players campaigned to have Antonio Pierce come back, get the interim label removed, but what's happened 4 games in? The star wide receiver wants a trade. So I don't know if Pierce's locker room message is really working, or if Davante Adams is just a diva. I don't know. If you watch Receiver on Netflix, you can certainly make your own judgments on Davante the guy. But for Pierce to maybe have lost a bit of the locker room with a 2-2 team whereas Peyton has these guys believing. He had them spend 9 days together on the East Coast. And Sean's got that big old Super Bowl ring too. So give me the edge to Sean Payton, although the competition isn't exactly fierce when it comes to Antonio Pierce.
Yeah, not exactly going up against a bunch. I'm pretty familiar with him. He was a coach over at Arizona State when I was there. So who, a lot of news actually came out about that pretty recently. I don't know if you're caught up on that. So a lot of drama just in general going on with the Raiders. We'll move on to quarterbacks. Both are not unknowns, but not exactly the most experienced guys. Where do you give the edge between Bo Nix and Gardner Minshew?
Probably Minshew because of the Minshew magic or whatever. I mean, he has had some sort of memorable wins. The guy lives in a van down by the river. I don't know. He's an odd character for sure. But yes, Gardner Minshew has bounced around, but everywhere he's bounced, he has kind of pulled out a few games. Listen, Bo Nix had that really good game in Tampa, Dante, and that's kind of what I'm clinging to right now. 3 of his 4 games have not been real pretty, but down in Tampa, he looked pretty good. So we do know it's in there. It's just got to be more consistent. I mean, let's be honest. Last week looked like he was shot putting a watermelon along MetLife. That was just his throwing motion was so awkward, And I get it. It was raining and the ball was slippery. Yada yada yada. Rodgers had trouble too. But after the big step forward in Tampa, the Jets game kind of felt like a step back. We need to see another step forward this week against Vegas. But if you made me pick, I would give the edge to Gardner Minshew right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Bo Nix can go out there and beat Gardner Minshew on any given day, so I don't think it's a massive edge. But if we're going based on consistency and track record, I think it's only fair to give it to Gardner at this point. And then we'll move on to offensive weapons. So who these guys will be throwing the ball to, who they'll be handing it off to. We do know, Josh Jacobs, leading rusher for the Raiders, gone this season after last year. I think he was franchise tagged last year, so he's out in Green Bay now. Where do you see the offensive weapons? Because the Broncos haven't been particularly great as far as tight ends, wide receivers, running backs go, but honestly, the Raiders haven't been either.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, are these the 2 worst skill position groups in the NFL? Not trying to be a downer, but outside of Cortland Sutton, who do you trust that's a skill maker for the Broncos? Javonte Williams finally showed a few flashes last week. I think it's important he builds on that game this week. It was weird. It was almost like it took Tyler Bidet getting hurt where Javonte's like, okay, that guy's not taking my job. Now I can get going. But I give the edge to the Broncos, but barely, because you're right. I mean, Devontae Adams, he's going to get ruled out in a couple hours here when we get the injury report because he's hurt, right? But he will have the out designation when that officially gets released this afternoon. Brock Bowers is a weapon, but he's a rookie. And then you tell me, dude. I mean, it's Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, Jacoby Myers is the name that came to mind, and that's about it.
I can't name you another, because I don't think Hunter Renfrow plays in Vegas anymore. So it's who are the wide receivers outside of Devontae who's not playing, and Jacoby and Brock? I mean, it is. I think Alexander Madison is their new starting running back, the former Vikings running back. It's slim pickings in Denver, but it's worse in Las Vegas. Give me the Broncos by an edge. How about you?
I'm with you on that. I think Cortland Sutton's better than any receiver the Raiders are going to trot out there on Sunday, especially since Devontae Adams won't be out there. Greg Dulcich is, the ultimate question mark in terms of a lot of people around here believe in him and think he can do stuff. Hasn't really shown up on the field thus far, but that's always kind of lurking in the background that we could have a Greg Dulcich game. And then we'll move on to the defense. Offensive line, I guess we can get into. I don't know how familiar you are with the Raiders, so I was going to let you pass on that. So
we can skip O-line. I'm not Mel Kiper breaking down Raiders O-line, Dante.
Okay. Well, let's go on to the defense then. We'll just do the defense as a whole. Broncos did it wasn't a weird weather game, but they did hold Aaron Rodgers down to 3 field goals last weekend. Raiders kept the Browns down last weekend, I think 16 points total as well. So both kind of rely on their defense to this point for those 2-2 records. Where to give the edge for both teams' defenses?
Yeah, the Raiders have a good defense, but I'm curious to see if Max Crosby's going to play or not. We know Max Crosby's been a Broncos killer over the years. I mean,
I think he's been an everybody killer.
He's been an everybody killer, but particularly Dan. I feel like every time he plays the Broncos, dude walks away with 2.5 sacks. So I don't think he's going to play. We'll get that official word this afternoon. But even if Crosby is out there, I think I'd give the edge to the Broncos. I mean, we're talking about a top 5 defense in the NFL right now. and a defense that went out east, held Tampa to 7 and the Jets to 9. 16 points on that East Coast swing. You probably watched Thursday Night Football while you were flipping back and forth from baseball last night. The Bucs lost. Okay, I get they lost, but they had no problem moving the football. It wasn't their offense the reason they lost. It was their defense giving up 36 points and Kirk Cousins throwing for 500 yards. I was watching that game last night going, oh, baby, the Broncos defense is really good because they made that Tampa offense look pedestrian, and then last night they moved the football at will. So there are very few teams, if any teams right now, I wouldn't give the edge to the Broncos on defense. So certainly giving them the edge this weekend. I assume you agree on that one?
I do. 100%. I think, yeah, like you said, top 5 defense at this point. We had James Palmer on earlier this week, and he was saying, out of all the 2-2 teams in the AFC, Broncos far and away have the best defense. And that was over the Jets defense, over the Ravens defense, Colts defense, which hasn't been great, but okay. Chargers defense and the Raiders defense. So I think it's hard to argue that the Broncos aren't a top 5 defense, maybe even top 3 at this point. So we'll look to see if that continues. Those weather games and those one-off games can kind of throw off those averages. I think I saw, can't remember which team it was, but it's whoever. Oh, it's the Chargers. They held the Panthers to 3 points, and that kind of, propelled the Chargers defense into like a top 5 defense at this point. But, one of those games through 4 games can kind of be an aberration and throw off those averages a little bit. But I do think this Broncos defense is for real. And
it was 80 and sunny in Tampa Bay. That wasn't a weather game, and they held the Bucs to 7 points. So, I do see what you're saying. You make a valid point. It's a very small sample size, only 4 games of the season. But it's not like that Jets game is the only reason they're top 5. I mean, they did that to the Steelers here. They mostly did it to the Seahawks outside of the third quarter, and they, of course, did it in Tampa. I mean, really, they've played 16 quarters. They've had one bad quarter all year, the third quarter in Seattle.
Yeah, no, I, again, completely agree with that. Well, let's do real quick, actually, before we do predictions for the game. Is this a must win for the Broncos? Do you think with all the dysfunction around the Raiders, they're favored on Sunday, they're at home on Sunday, it's their easiest opponent, you could argue, to this point. Do you think it's one of those, not in terms of must win to go to the playoffs, but just must win for building on to the rest of the season?
Yeah, I like to reserve my must wins for bigger games than this. I'll go with need to win. Need to win. But it's not a must win. No one's panicking if they lose, but it will be a gut punch if you lose to such a dysfunctional Raiders team. And a good way for everyone to forget about your 2-0 East Coast road trip? Come home and lay an egg against the Raiders. You got to keep this momentum going. Get a third win in a row. Get the Chargers in here. Try to get to 4-2. It's a need to win, but I can't go must win. Not in October with a 2-2 football team.
No, that's fair. And Sean Payton has emphasized how big October wins are, so I think he'd agree with you on that. So they have the Raiders this week, Chargers the following week. I'm going to ask you a hypothetical here. If I offered you, they split. They go 1-1, guaranteed. We're going 3-3 into, what would that be, week 6? Would you, or week 7? Yeah, sorry, week 7, obviously, because 3-3. Thank you. Will Peterson also does math on the side. Would you take that? Would you take 3-3 going into week 7, or are you hungry for that 2-0 over the next couple weeks?
I mean, this team had a 5-game winning streak last year, and the head coach and the quarterback hated each other. So why can't we get a 4-game winning streak this year when the head coach is his favorite new toy is the quarterback? He'll never say anything negative about Bo Nix. So yeah, if this defense could win you 5 in a row last year, I'm going to get a little greedy, Dante. I'm saying no deal. I think the Broncos can make it 4 straight, get to 4-2. I will politely decline your offer of 3-3.
Okay, I like it. I think they can go 2-0 too. I wouldn't take that deal either. Deal or no deal, Howie Mandel here.
Yes, exactly. Like I got the $1 million case up there, and I got the penny case. I'm not taking your $400,000. I'm going to see what's in my case.
Okay, I like it. All right, well, let's do it. Final predictions. What do you got on Sunday? What are you expecting? Score and winner.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an ugly, low-scoring game because that just seems to be what the Broncos are playing right now. I do hold out hope because of that Tampa day, but I need to see it again before I'm going to pick the Broncos to score in the 20s. I can't make the first number a 2, but I will make the first number a 1. Give me Broncos 17-7. I just don't think this Raiders offense is going to do anything. 17-7 Broncos. Where do you land?
I think it'll be a little more scoring. I would go 23-17. Broncos win.
Wow, I love
I
it.
think
Okay, Dante Gomez is hammering the over because I can't imagine that number's in the 40s. It's got to be in the 30s. So 23-17. I mean, I could see it, don't get me wrong, but 23 would be a lot for this Broncos offense to score right now, and 17 honestly feels like it'd be a lot for this defense to give up given the lack of Raiders playmakers.
Yeah, no, that is fair. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like eventually these teams, Gardner Minshew, like you said, provides some weird Minshew magic at
Yeah.
points, and this Broncos defense has been great, but it's hard to be great for that long and keep it up. So yeah, I think Bo Nix builds off his Tampa game. I think that New York Jets game you can kind of throw out at this point. It's just such a weird game back and forth. And once it gets to one of those games where it's gonna be low scoring, coaches start being more conservative. They want to punt in certain situations. So I think they break open the floodgates for 23 points.
I love it, man. But Mile High is throwing it back to 1977 on Sunday. That's all we've seen the last couple of days. So party like it's 77 with 23 points, baby.
23 points in 1977 was probably a lot, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on. Avalanche dropped the puck. Regular season starts next Wednesday out in Vegas, 8 p.m. That'll be on national TV, TNT. So no worries around Denver. Everybody will be able to tune in. Have you heard anything coming out of the Avalanche camp as far as preseason goes? I know Landeskog's still probably a couple months away. Have you been watching any of the preseason games? Have you been, keying in on anything that you've been looking for through those?
I think this has been a good reminder that preseason hockey is worthless. I turned on the Avs and Knights the other night at Ball Arena, and I was just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, this isn't good hockey. I think it may be more worthless than preseason football. Like, I think they won last night, but they were winless to that point. And I saw some fans like, oh my gosh, we're 0-4 in the No one cares. No one cares that you're 0-4 in the preseason. I was at the media day a couple of weeks ago, and the Landeskog thing, we still don't have a timeline, and I get they don't want to put timelines on things, but at some point he said mid-September to April. Well, last time I checked, mid-September is come and gone, and he's not back. I understand that was a broad range he put on it, but I think we'll all feel better if we sit down for a Thanksgiving dinner or maybe Christmas dinner and Gabe Landeskog's been back on the ice. I think that's sort of the target. Some point in 2024, Avs fans will be able to take a deep breath if Gabe's out there.
Yeah, I like that. Do you think it's necessary for him to come back for this Avs team to make a run in the playoffs?
Definitely. They need his leadership. I think part of what's gone wrong the last 2 years, obviously, Nichushkin, what he did in Seattle and then against Dallas. I mean, deja vu all over again, right? But with Gabe, there's an element of leadership they had when they won the Cup that I think they've been missing the last two playoff runs. He's definitely got to get back out there at some point. Let's call it March at the absolute latest so he can play 10 to 15 games before the postseason. You're not putting him out there for a game one if he hasn't skated all year. So I think March 1st is kind of that's sort of the do or die moment for Gabe Landeskog if he's ever going to play in the NHL again.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's just too much to ask for him to just throw him into the playoffs. So you definitely need a ramp up period. And like you said, hopefully 2024, hopefully we're sitting down for Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner and we see Gabe Landeskog out in an Avs sweater. Well, that's all I had on the Avs. We're still, early season, so we'll have plenty of time to talk about them all winter and fall. But let's move on to the Nuggets. First preseason game for them today. Took on the Boston Celtics out in Abu Dhabi. I was only able to catch the first quarter before I had to come down here, so I didn't catch too much of it. The Nuggets did play a lot of their guys. Pretty much their starting five was their starting five. Or I guess, Coach Malone made it sound like that shooting guard spot's up for grabs, but sounds like we all know that Christian Brown is going to be filling that role. So game is probably still going here. Yeah, it looks like it's in the fourth quarter. So I was more of a box score checker, which I do hate breaking down games based on box scores, but that's all I have to go on. Jamal Murray, only 4 shots when I last looked. Was that concerning to you at all, or you just throw it's preseason, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Jamal's one of the biggest question marks after what he did in the Olympics, right? He didn't look like himself. He looked slow. He looked hurt. And a lot of that can hopefully be chalked up to, well, he didn't get a play with Nikola Jokic. Team Canada and Team Serbia certainly weren't teammates over in Paris. But, yeah, you'd like to see a little more out of Jamal. I'm not going to panic over a preseason game, again, halfway around the world. But there was a lot of positives if we want to go there. Russell Westbrook brought a lot of energy today. That bench looked better. I think Dario Saric remains kind of a steal in free agency. Like, I think Westbrook and Saric are a big upgrade from, I don't know, Reggie Jackson and Zeke Naji. Like, this is going to make a difference. And as you mentioned, that starting five, Christian Brown locked down Jason Tatum today, Dante. I know the game doesn't count, but anytime Christian Brown gets on the court, he plays relentless defense. Maybe Calvin Booth knew what he was doing going with the guy that was 10 years younger. KCP kind of ran out of steam last year in the postseason. Brown's not the shooter KCP is, I get it, but watching him lock down Tatum today was exciting to see.
Yeah, no, I agree on Christian Brown too. I think, 10 years younger and probably a lot cheaper than KCP was going to be. So sometimes GM, you got to make some hard decisions. And I think that'll end up becoming a great decision in retrospect for Calvin Booth. Like you said, Russell Westbrook brought some energy, kind of filled the stat sheet here. I got 12 points, 8 assists, 4 rebounds. So kind of did a little bit of everything, kind of what we're expecting from him this year in running that second group. Do you see Russell Westbrook as that sixth man that, can command the bench there and then maybe finish some games too at the end?
Yeah, I mean, filling the box score is what he's done, right? There's a reason he's the all-time leader in triple doubles, because this guy just fills the box score. He's all over the floor. He's got a big motor. But I think your last question is the biggest one, right? Because when MPJ would get benched in the final moments, people would be like, whatever. If Jamal Murray gets benched for Russell Westbrook with games on the line, that is going to be the one to watch. I don't have an answer for you now, but that's the most fascinating thing to develop. When they're playing a contender early in the season and it's tied in the fourth quarter with 4 minutes left, if Michael Malone goes with Westbrook over Jamal, I promise you that will create headlines.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could see it being Westbrook over Brown too, or MPJ. I think there's a lot of different. I think you could have Westbrook and Murray out there at the same time, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see that as a finishing lineup at some point. This fall, this winter before the playoffs start. So I think there's a lot of combinations that Malone is going to try to play with before playoff time comes. And then they are the third, I don't know how I want to phrase this. They have the third most amount of wins as far as preseason wins expectations as far as regular season wins for the Western Conference here. Do you think it's important for the Nuggets to strive for that 1 seed this year? Or do you think, health and just building team camaraderie, team chemistry would be more important going into the playoffs?
I think it's the health and the chemistry and the camaraderie. Listen, they went for it hard last year. They should have gotten it, but they blew that game in San Antonio. But they still had it against Minnesota. And what happened against the Wolves? The road team won 5 of 7 games, right? Including those first 4. Wolves get 2 here, Nuggets get 2 back there. Dallas went to the NBA Finals of what? 4, 5 seed, 6 seed? I don't know. But it doesn't matter, I think. I think basketball is becoming more like hockey. The thing in hockey that's always weird is the playoffs are basically a coin flip. It does not matter if you're home or on the road. It's something like 52-48, like the smallest of margins. I think the NBA is slowly getting to that. I don't think fans who buy $300 tickets want to hear that, but I think that's the unfortunate reality. Much more important to go in healthy, well-rested, 4, 5, 6 seed, whatever, than chasing the 1 seed and then running out of gas like they did last year.
Yeah, no, I mean, I still think I'd like my team to have that home court edge. But, as you're saying, it is less and less important as the years go on. And obviously health is the number one thing going into those playoffs. Nuggets did seem to run out of gas there, which, to be honest, I don't really understand. You've made it to 1 finals. That's, teams do that all the time historically, where, you have teams, the Warriors went to what, like 4 or 5 straight. There's no complaining about running out of gas there in year 2, at least. So I'd like to see, a little bit less, I don't know if I want to call it an excuse, but less excuses for lack of better terms there, as far as running out of gas there in year 2 of a championship run here. But yeah, that'll do it for us. Will, thank you for joining. Any last messages you have on the way out, or?
Hey, when you blow a 20-point lead at home in Game 7, you need an excuse, bro. Like that's just the way the world works. Why the heck did you blow a 20-point lead at home in Game 7? That one is going to sting for a while, my friend. Yeah.
No, hey, I've seen it done. I'm from Phoenix, so the Suns have some historically bad elimination games over the last couple years.
You feel our pain.
Exactly. Maybe I brought it to Denver when I moved out here. So, but like I said,
you were here for the championship, and that was our first one. You're not the bad luck. You're not the bad luck.
That's true. All right. Well, Will, I appreciate you joining. We'll be back next week on Monday. It will not be me filling in. You'll have Richie Carney. But Will, thank you for joining, and thank you for watching, everybody. We'll catch you next Monday at noon. Thank you.